Forget Cold War II. This is World War III knocking at the door, and the fuse is reportedly lit in Beijing, with an assist from Islamabad. We're talking about a full-scale, two-front invasion plan targeting India, a democratic behemoth. Is this China's desperate, terrifying answer to its imploding economy, as giants like Apple stampede for the exits? India has transformed its northern frontier into a death trap for any invader. But is it enough to stop a nuclear-armed Axis drunk on ambition and economic desperation? India's two-front war. Let's be brutally honest. India is already fighting for its life on two fronts, even if one is a simmering, undeclared war. The line of control with Pakistan? It's a perpetual knife edge. Sure, the 2021 ceasefire brought a deceptive quiet, but Pakistan, with its ambiguous nuclear hair trigger and history of state-sponsored terror, remains an ever-present threat. But it's the silent, creeping aggression from communist China along the vast line of actual control that's become India's existential nightmare. Don't let the occasional diplomatic handshakes fool you. After Prime Minister Modi's 2024 re-election, Beijing might have finally sent an ambassador back to New Delhi after an 18-month freeze, but the Himalayas are still bristling with tens of thousands of troops locked in a terrifying embrace. The savage 2020 Galwan Valley bloodbath, where soldiers fought with medieval brutality? That wasn't an anomaly. It was a statement of intent from Xi Jinping. China's relentless land grabbing, its new military outposts, its arrogant dismissal of Indian sovereignty, it's all part of a playbook to crush India's rise. And with Pakistan acting as Beijing's rabid attack dog, the nightmare of a synchronized pincer invasion isn't just plausible, it's the scenario keeping Indian war rooms lit 24/7. China's desperate nuclear gamble? So why would China, a nation obsessed with its global image, risk becoming an international pariah by igniting a war with India? Look no further than its imploding economy and the humiliating exodus of Western manufacturing. Apple, the crown jewel of global tech, is leading the stampede out of China, a devastating blow to Xi Jinping's prestige and the CCP's narrative of unstoppable economic dominance. By early 2025, the shift is seismic. The majority of iPhones destined for the critical US market are now projected to be assembled in India. Vietnam is grabbing iPads, Macs, and AirPods. We're talking a potential $900 million hit to Apple's quarterly costs just from tariffs on remaining Chinese production, forcing their hand. Foxconn is aiming to churn out 30 million iPhones in India in 2025 alone, targeting a shocking 25% of Apple's global iPhone production from India by 2027. This isn't a trickle, it's a flood. For the CCP, watching its manufacturing throne crumble as India rises as a viable alternative is an economic and political catastrophe. Could this desperation, this fear of losing face and economic leverage, be the catalyst pushing Beijing towards an insane military gamble? A reckless attempt to reassert power through brute force? The correlation is too stark to ignore. The Himalayan Game Over Zone. If Xi Jinping and his Pakistani allies think they can just waltz into India, they're in for a very bloody surprise. The Himalayas aren't just mountains, they are India's natural, brutal fortress. Arunachal Pradesh, the likely eastern invasion route for the PLA, is a logistical hellscape. Impenetrable jungles, sheer cliffs soaring to 18,000 feet where engines sputter and soldiers suffocate, and raging rivers that become death traps. This is terrain where the People's Liberation Army, mostly untested in high-altitude warfare, will break. India, on the other hand, owns these mountains. Decades of combat experience in Siachen, the world's highest battlefield, and the brutal Kargil War have forged the Indian Army into the planet's premier mountain fighting force. And they're not waiting for an invitation. India has spent billions transforming its borders into a high-tech meat grinder. All-weather superhighways, strategic tunnels, and reinforced airfields now give Indian forces unprecedented mobility. Fortified bases are dug deep into the rock, bristling with advanced sensors. The Siliguri Corridor, India's tenuous chicken's neck link to its northeastern states, once a glaring weakness, Indian military brass now boasts it's one of the most heavily defended pieces of real estate on Earth. Squadrons of S-400 Triumph air defense systems create an almost impenetrable shield. French Rafale jets armed with deadly Scalp cruise missiles are poised to strike from multiple air bases. BrahMos supersonic missiles, new Predator drone fleets, K-9 Vajra self-propelled howitzers, and M777 ultralight artillery pieces are all dug in, zeroed, and waiting. The message to any invader? Welcome to hell. Bangladesh, a third front to bleed India dry? But what if China, realizing the Himalayan front is a death wish, tries a more insidious approach? Alarms are blaring in New Delhi over Beijing's rapidly expanding influence in Bangladesh. While Dhaka officially plays neutral, its growing dependence on Chinese cash and military hardware is undeniable. The bombshell? Reports in early 2025 of China pushing to redevelop a disused airfield in Lal Marat, Bangladesh, a stone's throw, just 20 kilometers from India's hypercritical Siliguri corridor. Officially, it's for civilian use. Unofficially, it's a potential staging ground for Chinese surveillance aircraft, electronic warfare units, or worse, a launchpad for arming and supporting the myriad insurgent groups already plaguing India's volatile northeast. This isn't just strategic encroachment. It's China potentially opening a third shadow front without firing a single shot from its own territory, aiming to outflank India's main defenses and bleed it from within. For Beijing, seeking dominance in the Bay of Bengal, turning Bangladesh into a strategic outpost is a masterstroke of asymmetric warfare. Xi Jinping should take a long, hard look at Putin's blood-soaked disaster in Ukraine before he even thinks about invading India. A full-scale assault, especially through the Himalayas, wouldn't be the lightning victory CCP propagandists might dream of. It would be a horrifying, protracted slaughterhouse. China would find itself mired in a brutal war of attrition against a nuclear-armed nation of 1.4 billion people, fighting with religious fervor on their home soil. The PLA's logistical lines would be stretched to breaking point across thousands of miles of unforgiving terrain, hounded day and night by Indian air power and special forces. Untested in major combined arms warfare for over 4 decades, the PLA would face an Indian military that's been in constant combat mode, whether on its borders or internally for generations. High casualties, shattered morale, and bogged-down armies, that's the most likely outcome, not a victory parade in New Delhi. This wouldn't just tarnish the PLA's image, it could very well shatter the CCP's grip on power. Even if, by some miracle, China achieved limited military gains, the economic self-destruction would be total. The India-China trade relationship, historically worth well over $100 billion a year, would evaporate overnight. But that's just the opening salvo. Picture this: global markets in freefall, investors yanking billions out of China so fast it creates a black hole, the yuan worthless, maritime insurance for shipping through the Malacca Strait and the Indian Ocean, the arteries of China's global trade and energy imports, would hit stratospheric levels, effectively blockading the country. China's crucial energy supplies, many of which sail right past India, would be choked off. And the global supply chain, already fleeing China thanks to Apple & Co., it would permanently reroute, leaving China an isolated, impoverished pariah state. For an economy already teetering from a bursting property bubble, stagnant growth, and the disastrous tech war with the West, initiating a conflict with India isn't just a bad idea. It's an economic dead end. Nuclear Armageddon. Pakistan's Madman theory. Now let's talk about the unthinkable. Nuclear war. India, China, and Pakistan all have the bomb. India, while officially maintaining a no-first-use doctrine, has seen its political rhetoric grow increasingly hawkish, hinting that this pledge isn't sacrosanct. China officially has an NFU, but its rapid nuclear expansion raises questions. And then there's Pakistan. Islamabad's nuclear doctrine is pure, terrifying ambiguity, a full-spectrum deterrence explicitly designed to unleash tactical nuclear weapons, like the Nasir battlefield missile, to stop any significant Indian conventional advance. They've never signed an NFU. Their threshold for going nuclear if they feel their very existence is at stake is dangerously low. Imagine a coordinated Sino-Pak attack. If India launches a massive counteroffensive into Pakistan, a near certainty, could Islamabad, facing collapse, hit the red button? This could then trigger Indian nuclear retaliation, which in turn could drag China into the atomic abyss. A three-way nuclear exchange in the heart of Asia? It's the end of the world as we know it, and it's a terrifyingly plausible outcome of this reckless brinksmanship. If Beijing and Islamabad are delusional enough to launch an unprovoked invasion of India, they won't just face India. they'll face the wrath of the entire civilized world. The United States, the Quad Alliance, US, India, Japan, Australia, the European Union. They would unite to unleash economic sanctions so devastating they'd make the Russia sanctions look like a parking ticket. China, for all its bluster, is still deeply dependent on global markets and technology. It would be cut off, isolated, its Belt and Road dreams turning to dust. Its technological advancement would grind to a halt. Even nations on the fence, perhaps even a wary Russia, would likely condemn such a blatant act of aggression, terrified of the global chaos it would unleash. Xi Jinping's dream of a Chinese century wouldn't just be delayed, it would be buried under an avalanche of international condemnation and economic ruin. So why? Why would Xi Jinping, a supposedly calculating leader, even contemplate this self-destructive path? Is it sheer imperial arrogance? A catastrophic misjudgment of India's iron will and military muscle? Or is the CCP so terrified by its internal crises, a collapsing economy, the humiliation of global businesses like Apple fleeing, demographic nightmares, and Xi's own need for a glorious legacy, that it sees a high-stakes foreign war as its only distraction, its only path to survival? Perhaps Beijing, steeped in its own propaganda, truly believes it can snatch a quick victory, humiliate India, and redraw the map of Asia before the world can react. Or maybe, blinded by its deep-seated mistrust of India as a Western pawn, it sees a preemptive strike as a twisted form of self-defense. Whatever the twisted logic, it's a gamble that bets the future of China and potentially the world on a single insane roll of the dice. India is staring into the abyss, a nation fortified but facing a potential two-front war orchestrated by a desperate China and its nuclear-armed proxy. Is Beijing truly unhinged enough to ignite a conflict that could escalate to nuclear Armageddon, all while its economy is being gutted by the flight of giants like Apple? Can India's new Himalayan death traps and global alliances hold the line against this axis of aggression? Or is the world about to pay the ultimate price for Beijing's reckless ambition? What do you believe is China's true motive? Let us know.